Before we dive into what really happened that day, make sure you're subscribed and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Let's get into it. The desert wind at forward operating base Halverson bites with the sting of diesel fuel and resignation, a gritty assault on the senses. The base hunkers down against the Afghan landscape, its prefab walls and razor wire patched too many times to inspire confidence, like a fortress that knows it's only temporary. Beyond the perimeter, mountains rise like jagged, broken teeth, piercing a sky that shifts only between shades of heat and dust, never changing color. Lieutenant Commander Arden Rusk steps off the ramp of a transport helicopter with the careful precision of someone whose muscles remember old injuries. She's in her mid-40s, unremarkable in the way career military officers learn to be, regulation brown hair pulled back tight, standard-issue uniform pressed but not pampered, boots worn in all the right places from years of hard use. A single duffel bag hangs over her shoulder, and a battered clipboard is tucked into its straps, its edges scratched from deployments most soldiers haven't seen. Rotor wash kicks up clouds of fine sand, gritty and metallic, mixed with the acrid tang of exhaust fumes. It gets into everything: eyes, teeth, the creases of gear that will take weeks to clean. Others on the landing zone turn away, shielding their faces, but Rusk stands still, squinting into the storm without flinching, unmoved until the chopper lifts off. Her eyes scan the horizon with the kind of focus most people reserve for immediate threats, like she's reading something in the distance others can't see. A young soldier near the fuel point nudges his buddy, pointing at her stillness amid the scramble, a woman whose learned discomfort is a luxury she can't afford. Chief Blake Maris waits by the fuel depot, arms crossed, chewing the dregs of his morning coffee. At 38, he carries the controlled aggression of a man who's made life-or-death decisions in places where hesitation means death. His tactical vest hangs loose over a sweat-stained t-shirt, his weapon at low ready, not because he expects trouble, but because expecting trouble has kept him alive through 4 deployments. He watches Rusk cross the landing zone, irritation creeping into his expression. She doesn't move like an operator, doesn't carry the swagger of someone who belongs on a forward base where the enemy has been taking shots at the wire every night for 3 weeks. "You've got to be kidding me," he mutters to Petty Officer First Class Santos, who stands beside him, his face mirroring the same skepticism. "They want us to babysit a logistics rep." Santos spits into the dust, shaking his head. "Brass says she's here to assess how we operate in the SCAR." The word SCAR makes both men glance toward the eastern ridge, where the land drops into a shadowed bowl of stone that's been claiming American lives for 6 months. 3 SEAL squads went in, parts of 2 came back. The rest are marked by GPS coordinates nobody dares mention over evening chow. Rusk approaches with a measured pace, not hurried but deliberate, like someone who knows exactly where she's going. She stops just close enough for a handshake but keeps her distance, offering professional courtesy without presumption. "Chief Maris," she says, her voice steady, unremarkable, the kind you'd hear in briefing rooms where death is discussed like a line item on a budget. "That's right," Maris replies, his tone clipped. "You're the observer." "I'm here to assess operational efficiency in hostile terrain," Rusk says, her eyes flicking subtly toward the eastern ridge. "I understand you've had challenges in the designated AO." Santos snorts, barely containing himself. "Challenges? That's one word for it." Maris shoots him a sharp look, "Don't talk out of turn," then turns back to Rusk. "Ma'am, with respect, the SCAR isn't the kind of place where observers survive long enough to file their reports." Something flickers across her face, not offense, not fear, but a patient recognition, like hearing a song she learned years ago in a different key. "Then it should be an interesting assessment," she says, her voice calm, almost understated, but carrying a weight that makes Maris pause. The sun climbs higher, turning the base's corrugated metal roofs into ovens, the air shimmering like water over the distant mountains. Inside the Tactical Operations Center, the morning briefing has the subdued air of a funeral waiting to begin. Maps plaster every wall, marked with red X's that tell a story nobody wants to read twice. Maris stands at the front, pointing to satellite imagery of the scar projected on a screen that's seen better decades. Grid reference 47 Charlie, he says, his voice steady but heavy. Natural depression, approximately 800 meters across, steep approaches on all sides. No confirmed structures, no visible defensive positions, no obvious high-value targets. He pauses, his jaw working around words he doesn't want to say. 3 teams have gone in over the last 6 months. Bravo Squad lost 4 men, extracted under heavy fire. Delta went in with 8, came out with 3, all wounded, 2 critical. Echo Squad. He doesn't finish the sentence. Everyone in the room knows what happened to Echo. Rusk sits in the back corner, her clipboard balanced on her knees, taking notes in handwriting so precise it's almost mechanical. She hasn't asked a single question during the 40-minute brief, hasn't requested clarification on tactical details, hasn't even shifted in her chair. But Maris notices the way her eyes track the screen, following contour lines and elevation markers like she's reading a story written in topographical ink. When Kumar, the team's comm specialist, mentions casualty rates, her pen pauses for a fraction of a second, not with surprise, but with the recognition of patterns playing out in unfamiliar places. When Santos points out the natural choke points where previous squads were ambushed, she makes a small mark in her notebook's margin, so quick and subtle most would miss it entirely. The enemy's using the terrain against us, Maris continues, his voice tight with frustration. Natural funnel points, overlapping fields of fire, concealed positions that give them advance warning of any approach. It's textbook defensive positioning, except we can't identify where they're positioned. Petty Officer Second Class Kumar raises his hand. Chief, what about air support? AC-130 could glass the whole area. Maris shakes his head. Negative. Rules of engagement require positive ID on hostile targets. We can't bomb shadows. Plus, we still have 2 missing operators in there. No ordnance until we confirm their status. The room falls silent, the weight of those missing men, Petty Officers Martinez and Chen from Echo Squad, hanging heavy. Their GPS beacons went dark 3 days ago, their last transmission a broken whisper about movement in the rocks, impossible to pinpoint. Rusk looks up from her notes for the first time. What's the prevailing wind direction in the target area? The question catches everyone off guard. Maris blinks, thrown. Ma'am, wind patterns? She clarifies, her tone even. Thermal currents, how air moves through the depression. Kumar pulls up a weather overlay on his tablet. Generally southeast to northwest. Thermal updrafts during the day, cooling downdrafts after sunset. Why? Rusk makes another note, her pen moving with mechanical precision. Just trying to understand all the variables. But the way she asks, like someone who already knows the answer and is testing if others do, makes Maris wonder if this quiet woman with the clipboard is more than she seems. The farewell messages are already written, a grim ritual before any mission into the scar. Folded letters tucked into footlockers, voice recordings saved on secure drives, photographs left face down on bunks for someone to find later. Kowalski has a letter for his wife taped inside his locker door. Santos recorded a message for his kids, saved with a file name that'll make sense to whoever handles his effects. Even Maris, who avoids sentiment, wrote instructions for his mother about scattering his ashes if Afghanistan claims him. It's standard procedure, as routine as checking ammunition counts, just another piece of equipment that might be needed. Echo Squad's gear is laid out in the armory like surgical instruments, rifles cleaned and zeroed, ammunition counted and recounted, communication equipment tested and retested. Every piece has been inspected by 3 different people, signed off by someone staking their career on its reliability. Maris walks the line of kit, checking details he's already verified twice, his team making final adjustments with the focused intensity of men who know their lives depend on a magazine seating properly or a radio battery holding its charge. Comms check every 15 minutes, Maris says, his voice carrying absolute authority. No exceptions. Visual contact maintained at all times. Nobody goes anywhere alone. Kowalski, the team's medic, looks up from his aid bag. What about the observer? Is she staying on the ridge? That's the plan, Maris replies, glancing toward the door where Rusk is due for final coordination. She observes. We operate. But when Rusk appears 10 minutes later, she's not carrying her clipboard. A small rucksack is slung over her shoulder, and her gear looks practical, field-worn, the kind that's seen more dirt than desk. Her uniform is the same, but her posture has shifted, less administrative, more operational. Santos notices first. Ma'am, you planning to accompany the patrol? I'm planning to observe from the optimal vantage point, she says, which isn't really an answer. Maris studies her, trying to reconcile the note-taker from the briefing with the woman before him. With respect, ma'am, he says, optimal for observation isn't optimal for survival. The scar makes observers casualties. Rusk meets his gaze directly, unflinching. I'll try not to get in your way. There's no arrogance, just quiet certainty that makes Maris wonder if he's misjudged her. You have a weapon? He asks. I have what I need, she replies, her tone steady but evasive. The convoy rolls out just after 0700, 3 vehicles in tactical formation across terrain that looks like God's rough draft of a planet. Broken stone, scattered brush, stunted trees that gave up growing straight. The lead vehicle, a mine-resistant, ambush-protected truck, bears scars from 2 IED strikes, its armor pitted but unyielding. A Humvee carries most of Echo Squad's personnel and equipment, while 2 operators on dirt bikes serve as mobile scouts, ready to probe anything suspicious. Rusk rides in the Humvee's passenger seat, her rucksack at her feet, her attention locked on the horizon. She hasn't spoken since leaving the base, but Maris notices how she tracks movement, a bird taking flight, dust kicked up by wind, shadows shifting as the sun climbs. She watches like someone who knows details can kill if missed. As they near the scar, radio chatter quiets, professional communications only, position reports, equipment checks, rally point confirmations. No one cracks jokes or gripes about the heat. The scar makes people serious. When they reach the overlook ridge, Maris calls a halt. The vehicles form a defensive perimeter as the team dismounts for final preparations. Below, the scar opens like a wound in the earth, a natural amphitheater of stone and shadow, deceptively peaceful but the deadliest ground in the province. Observer stays here, Maris says, his tone just shy of an order. We'll maintain radio contact, report status every 15 minutes. Rusk nods, moving to a position behind a rock outcropping that offers cover and a clear view of the valley below. She pulls a small pair of binoculars from her rucksack and begins scanning the terrain with systematic attention, like she knows what she's looking for. As Echo Squad prepares to descend, each man checks his weapon one last time, adjusts his gear, and tries not to dwell on the fact that 3 previous squads made these same preparations here. Some are still down there, marked by GPS coordinates that will one day be grave markers half a world away. Let's bring our boys home, Maris says, leading the squad down the slope. The scar swallows them like they never existed. 15 minutes into the patrol, the first radio check comes through clear. Echo 1 to Overwatch. Status report. Entering target area. No contact. Proceeding to first checkpoint. Rusk acknowledges from her ridge position, her voice calm, unhurried. Overwatch copies. Maintain comm schedule. 30 minutes in, the second check is slightly distorted but intelligible. Echo 1 to Overwatch. Checkpoint 1 secured. No visible threats. Proceeding to grid 47 Charlie 2. At 45 minutes, the radio crackles with static, and Maris's voice comes through broken. Echo to Over, somethings, can't identify, then nothing. Rusk tries raising them on 3 frequencies, then the backup, then the emergency channel. Nothing but the soft hiss of empty air and the distant moan of wind through rocks below. She lowers the radio and picks up her binoculars, scanning the scar with renewed intensity. At first, she sees only boulders and sparse vegetation, the same terrain the squad descended into. But gradually, she makes out shapes that don't belong, dark forms pressed against stone, perfectly still, perfectly camouflaged. The SEALs are down there, but they aren't moving, aren't advancing or retreating, aren't calling for support. They're waiting, like men who've accepted something they can't change. Through the binoculars, Rusk watches Maris stand slowly in the center of the depression, his rifle lowered. Around him, Echo Squad emerges from scattered positions, weapons hanging loose, shoulders slumped with inevitability. They're surrendering to an unseen enemy. Quietly, Rusk unpacks a rucksack, not observer gear, but a compact rifle with a suppressor, a worn tactical harness, a sidearm with stories of its own. She loads both with automatic precision, muscle memory carved deep by repetition. She doesn't ask for permission, doesn't radio for instructions. She stands, shoulders her gear, and walks, not into the scar, but up the opposite ridge, toward impossible terrain. Because Arden Rusk has been in places like the scar before, and she knows winning means changing the rules. The eastern slope is a defensive masterpiece, loose stone that shifts underfoot, concealed approaches that could hide a dozen shooters, elevation giving every advantage to the enemy. Rusk climbs fluidly, using shadows for concealment, natural depressions for cover, the terrain's geometry to mask her approach. She's hunting, not randomly, but with focused intent, having catalogued the scar's angles and sight lines from the ridge. Years in unmapped places taught her to read terrain like a language, to see how geography becomes a weapon. The enemy chose textbook positions. Rusk stopped being textbook long ago. The first position is a shallow depression behind boulders, offering perfect overwatch. She approaches from above, silent on loose stone. A camouflaged sniper focuses below. Rusk fires from 15 meters, suppressed, center mass. He slumps silently. She moves before he falls. The second position, a cave invisible from below, is tougher. She inches along a narrow ledge, back to stone. Inside, two men discuss the trapped Americans. She cooks a grenade for 3 seconds, rolls it in, drops flat. The explosion echoes like thunder, scattering dust. The cave falls silent. The third position, a sniper's nest in a rock chimney with 360-degree views, is riskiest. Open ground exposes her to fire. She sprints low, rifle ready. The sniper spots her, rotates to engage, professional, deadly. But Rusk isn't normal. She fires 3 controlled pairs while running, hitting center mass. His rifle goes silent. In the valley, the gunfire shifts everything. The invisible enemy is vulnerable, fighting for their lives. The SEALs, resigned moments ago, hear rifle cracks, explosions, violence not aimed at them. Maris raises his rifle, scanning ridges. "Someone's up there, cleaning house," he says into the radio. Santos tries. Overwatch, Echo 1. Status. Rusk's voice is steady. Echo 1, continue mission. Opposition neutralized. Who's neutralizing it? Santos demands. A pause. I am. Maris feels a chill. The logistics observer is clearing positions that stopped 3 squads. "Ma'am, what's your qualifications?" An explosion and rifle burst cut him off. The scar grows quieter than in 6 months. "Qualifications sufficient," Rusk says. Echo 1, clear to advance. Grid 47 Charlie 3 secure. That's where Martinez and Chen are. 20 minutes later, they find the missing SEALs, barely conscious in a cave, wounded, held as bait to trap rescuers. The enemy's strategy, control the high ground, use prisoners, destroy rescue attempts, was perfect. It would have worked if Rusk had stayed on the ridge. The medevac extracts Martinez, Chen, Echo Squad, and Rusk. The scar looks unchanged, hiding its violence. Rusk sits in the helicopter, a field dressing on her shoulder, blood on her uniform, hers and others. Mission complete. Status green, she says. Maris, across from her, can't reconcile the note-taker with the woman who cleared the valley. "Ma'am, what's your background?" She watches the landscape pass. Logistics for operations that don't exist. Her voice carries unseen battles. Her logistics remove obstacles with precise violence, the kind needed when men are trapped in deadly places. The after-action report, classified beyond 3 signatures, credits a non-existent unit. Echo Squad extracted 2 operators after unexpected tactical developments. No mention of Rusk. She vanishes from Halverson that night, quarters cleared, paperwork filed. By morning, she's gone. But in the operations center, a black patch with gray stitching, a jagged valley, Rusk embroidered, hangs by mission photos. No rank, no unit, just recognition of something unrecorded. The scar's empty positions whisper of an enemy that learned some ground isn't worth holding. Maris keeps the patch, telling new squads the scar was cleared by someone who proved assumptions kill. The most dangerous don't look it. Rusk showed that when hope fades, one person who refuses defeat can change everything. Ever been in a situation where someone you underestimated saved the day? What would you think seeing that logistics officer walk into a kill zone alone? How many heroes walk among us, disguised, waiting to show what courage looks like? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this story reminded you that quiet professionals get the job done, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about warriors hiding in plain sight. Share this with someone who knows the most dangerous person is the one you'd never suspect. More stories about hidden heroes are waiting. Watch those next, and we'll see you tomorrow with another reminder that appearances can deceive. Until then, remember the wolf doesn't announce itself to the sheep.